Hello, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. My name is Brian Fox. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Boris FX, and I am new to OBS, which I am streaming with right now. So apologies if this is a rough and rocky start. Strap in. I do not know what I'm doing. Unlike my counterparts, Ben Brownlee, Martin Bernan, and John Dickinson, they know what they're doing. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben, for all your patience in teaching me how to use this amazing software, which I had no idea how to use earlier today. All right, enough of me bemoaning about my lack of live streaming expertise. This is Office Hours, and let's talk about Sapphire and Sapphire Transitions. All right, as everyone knows, or if you've ever seen me demo before, I am a huge Sapphire fan. I work on the Sapphire product team. I have been using Sapphire professionally in some way, shape, or form since early 2001, and excited to talk about some of the new Sapphire transitions we have included, and really excited to talk about the Sapphire Transition Builder, which is probably my favorite part of Sapphire. I don't want to play favorites, but I do love the Sapphire Transition Builder. We are live, as I pointed out earlier, which means apologies for any technical glitches. Let me know how I'm sounding, how I'm looking. If there are borders in there, I apologize as well. But let me know in the chat, and feel free to ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them. Let's try and keep questions Sapphire related in generally so I can answer them confidently. But any questions you have, feel free to throw them in, and love to chat about Sapphire. All right, so let's get going. I'm going to jump into Premiere, and hopefully you guys can see my Premiere screen. I'm going to jump into a full screen here, and I'm going to show you this little sequence I put together with some of the Sapphire transitions in here as well. Okay, one thing I love to do is when searching for stock footage to enter the keyword dark or abstract or scary, right? Because this gets me my favorite type of stock footage, which is, in my preference, the weirder, the better. All right, I am sick and tired of looking at beautifully, gorgeously shot landscapes on drones, which are perfectly operated. I like the weird stuff, right? I like, we use filmpack.net for a lot of our stock footage. They have a nice collection of scary clowns, weird abstract dolls put in junkyards. I'm a big fan of those as well. As you can see here, freaky people in front of standard definition television screens, people holding smoke grenades, just anything to break it from the usual beautiful footage I'm a fan of. But I did kind of choose this footage for a reason other than my own weird preferences on stock footage. I think transitions work really good on kind of jarring video. So, anything scary, horror, you see tons of transitions work well. Basically, beautiful, because on horror, anything goes. But the point being that a lot of the Sapphire transitions that I like to use are very fast, they're very cutty, they're very jarring, and that kind of works really well on kind of scary footage of this type of stuff, as you can see. All right, so we're going to get into some of the new transitions. I'm going to walk you guys through Hyper Push and Hyper Loop. I'm going to walk through Whiplash. And like I said, any other questions about Sapphire transitions, feel free to let me know. And I will talk about those as well. But I'm also going to talk about the Sapphire Transition Builder, which I may even start there, to be honest with you, because it is the best and favorite part of Sapphire. And if you're not using the Sapphire Transition Builder, I challenge you in the chat to convince me why you are not using it. I really see no logical reason why you should ever be applying just a typical Sapphire plugin to a cut. You should always be using Transition Builder. It really is the way to go and the best way. All right, let's step into Premiere and kind of show y'all what I'm talking about. All right. Okay. Okay, so I have my sequence here, and over here on the left, if you guys can see that, hopefully I haven't cut that off in OBS, but I do have all my Sapphire effects highlighted here, and a little trick in your effect palette. If you're like me and you have a ton of plugins, if you want to filter out all the Sapphire ones, you just want to hit S underscore, and that will just pre-select all of Sapphire, so you don't have to see, like I have a ton of Continuum and a bunch of other really cool plugins as well. But if I just want to look at Sapphire, you can hit S underscore. And I have a whole bunch. There's over 270 effects. We all know Sapphire is a huge, big bunch of plugins. But what I like to always tell people is if you are using the transitions, you 100% want to go under video transitions and Sapphire transitions. So if you're lost and you're looking for whiplash or hyperloop or swish pan or glow dissolve or any of the big Sapphire transitions, you want to go ahead and always look under video transitions, not video effects, to find those Sapphire transitions. And that's where you'll also find the Sapphire Builder, right? So there is two different builder effects, S effect and S transition, and they both do similar things but different as well. So the Sapphire Builder that is called S effect, this is if you want to build a static effect, right? And the Sapphire transition, S transition, this is if you want to build a custom transition. I'll jump in and show you guys the differences between the two, but just good to know that S transition, specifically for building custom transitions from scratch. S effect is if you want to build your custom effects from scratch. So a single effect you want to put on a clip of video. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to take this off. And here I have my straight cut here. I have my lovely smoke grenade rioter who's standing very confident. Two different focal lengths I put together on purpose because I'm going to use an effect called hyper push, which is a good way to kind of use Sapphire to push in to a shot with a really cool kind of modern transition you guys see all the time, and has a bunch of motion behind it. Works great if you're jumping between different focal lengths. You can find Sapphire hyper push or hyper pull. Push goes into a footage, pull actually pulls out. So they're both the same effect, but they're just inverted. You find those right under here, under hyper pull and hyper push. But like I said, I'm going to completely ignore those, and I'm going to drag on S transition, right? So S transition, let me go ahead and drag it on, and look at that. It is beautiful. Let me go ahead and render that. It is a dissolve, fantastic, amazing. That is on purpose. That is because S transition is a blank slate. It is an empty canvas, right? It can become anything. So when you start off, it just defaults to a dissolve, and that's really where the fun begins. So it is like, I've said this before on different demos. I'm a huge Lord of the Ring fan. Shout out to the Ring of Power show, which is amazing on Amazon right now and really setting the bar for episodic television. But S transition is one transition to rule them all, my friends. It is everything. It is all Sapphire transitions jam-packed into one effect. It's like one empty transition with multiple thousands of different parameters. It can become anything. You can combine different transitions together. It has a bunch of cool presets. So this is why I really love S transition versus just dragging, dissolve glint or dissolve glow on an effect. You're stuck to those parameters and that look, but S transition really can become anything. So there's a couple different ways once we drag S transition onto a clip that we can enter the builder, as we call it. You can load preset, which is fine, or you can hit edit effect. I am going to click edit effect, and you can see here we launch what we call the builder. This is our own little application that we created in here, and I'll give you a little tour about it as I kind of set my workspace. You can see here on the left, here are all my different Sapphire effects. So we have pretty much everything in here. There are some effects that aren't in here, some of the time effects that don't work in the builder, but to be honest with you, they're not ones that really I ever find missing. Every one of these is keyword searchable. If we want to find ultra glow, we can just type in ultra glow, or if we want to find, let's say, TV damage, we can figure that as well, right? And if any clip I apply, like I'm just going to go ahead and let me throw blur on, double click here. If I fit this up, you can see here it loads blur in the stack, and I just want to show you that all your parameters over here are on the left. So here is your blur amount, like you're used to if you ever used Sapphire before as well. So it is basically like a little nodal based kind of builder here, stack that we're working with in the workspace. We have our preview window up the top here. That'll give you a nice little preview as we happen to crash probably with S blur, which is always fun. So this is where you're going to go ahead and let me just close this and see if it just builder crashed there. I'm going to blame OBS for this, since anyone who knows Sapphire knows that if I'm going to crash, it's definitely not going to be with S blur. I tell you that. That's always not the offender, as we say. S blur is probably the fastest Sapphire effect, the one that causes the least amount of issues. All right, let's try it again. Let's go ahead and throw S transition on, and I'm going to jump into edit effect, right? And we'll all hope for the best. So here is my from clip. This is what it should have done in the past. Give you a nice little preview, right? And if I just preview now, you can see what's happening. It's just showing me the from clip. And then here is the to clip, the clip that I'm going to with the cut right underneath there, right? And when I play them together, you're seeing that dissolve. It's dissolving between the two, right? But that's great and all. You can choose any of these dissolves. So any of our standard dissolves, we can go ahead and choose dissolve glow. And now we have a nice little glow. Let's go ahead and mess with some of these parameters a little bit. Let's maybe to throw this a little down. Let's get it a little softer so it's nice, a nice big wide soft glow. And maybe a little wider. I love how you can kind of be tweaking parameters as it's looping through. You can get a nice little vertical glow. It's almost like, I like to say, it's almost like kind of playing with a synthesizer here, that you can just be adjusting things on the fly while it loops and get it to where I like it. And then this is like the simplest use of S transition. Suppose I have this transition now I like. Let's go ahead and put the width down a little bit. And not obsess too much over this so we can show you guys how this works. All right, this looks good. And then what is really cool now is if I hit OK, I can jump back into Premiere and I will have created a little transition here. But you see these little check boxes on the side? These are the parameters that you want to send back into your host. So if you go ahead and turn on or off any of these transitions, let's go ahead and click glow brightness and glow threshold and maybe width, because these are the ones we really adjusted here, and hit OK. When you come back into Premiere now, I'll hit edit and let's go ahead and loop that. So here's my little transition now back in Premiere, but the cool thing you'll see is just those parameters you checked off, those will follow through to your NLE. Now this works in any host application that supports the builder. So I'm in Premiere right now, but this works the same in Resolve. This works the same in Media Composer. This works the same in Flame, right? So any of these different effects, this works similar in Nuke, right? So any of these type host applications we work with, just because I'm showing you guys all in Premiere, doesn't mean that it's a Premiere only kind of feature. Pretty much everything we try and do with Sapphire, we try and do it across the board, so it is a kind of even for all the host applications, makes it a lot easier for us to support as well. So when we talk about kind of like, you'll hear me say the builder a lot, and people are like, well, what do you mean? Like, why do you keep saying the builder? This is why, because basically what we've just done is build our own little plugin, right? We built our own little vertical glow in a very basic operation. We chose the effects inside, we chose a glow dissolve, we tweaked the parameters, we chose which ones to go back in the host, and now we can save this. You can call it Brian's beautiful glow transition, or your super secret transition, whatever you want, and you can apply it down key as well. It is always non-destructive, so I can jump back in and edit this as well, and I can turn all of these something back on here. Let's go ahead and turn color off, and now color will pop in, so it's very malleable, kind of forward and backward. You can turn off different parameters, you can add those as well. So that is kind of the most basic use. And when I said earlier that like everybody should be using the builder, like this is kind of what I mean, because even if in the past you're like a big fan of switch pan, or a big fan of blur dissolve, or maybe you've used a specific transition, I guarantee you there's some parameters in there you're like, I either have no idea what that parameter does, I never use it. It's just a good way to clean up your workspace and not have it bother you. You're in control of which parameters you use, and you can kind of make your own little blur dissolve or your own little switch pan. And it's easier for me, by the way, too, like when I kind of jump into some of my custom transitions I use a lot, then I can kind of see which parameters are the ones I'm looking for, right? Because those are the ones I purposely left on or off, and sometimes I forget, and I'm just like, why did I leave that, whatever, it's color parameter on, and then I'll start to play with it, and then I'll remember, oh yeah, because you can get this great little look as well. So that's kind of my pitch as to why I do love the transition builder, why I think everybody should be using it, instead of just dragging and dropping classic Sapphire transitions. I like to tell this horrifying tale a lot, which is that like what I would really love to do is to delete all of Sapphire transitions and just replace it with S transition. I would never do such a thing. I would hear shrieks coming from all across the world of editors wondering where glow dissolve was and wondering where switch pan was, but they could still go ahead and work the same way. So I encourage everyone to use these as well. All right, let me just check for any questions. Michael, looking forward to doing this. Hell yeah, Michael. Oops, sorry, that's the first profanity I will drop on this stream. I do love S transition wipes with borders, all goal of mine. Oh, John, good to see you, John, in here. I know, Ben, I'm sorry. Sorry for swearing. If HE double hockey sticks is the worst we get today, then I think we're winning. All right, I'm gonna keep going. Feel free to jump in, Michael. I will jump into a little wipes with borders too and show you guys that in a little bit as well. All right, so that edit effect, this little version of glow, this is the absolute simplest manner of S transition. We can go really crazy with this, right? So this is really just the beginning. We can add on so many different effects. So let's say I have my dissolve glow here. I'm gonna throw a shake on here. And you can see now what is happening is I am transitioning with dissolve glow, but after the transition, I am now shaking the whole transition as well. You can move this up. So let's just say I just want to shake the A clip, right? And so now I'm just shaking the from clip or the A clip, however you want to say it. And let's do a blur on the B clip, on the 2 clip. And so now you'll see I am blurring. I am shaking, almost going from a 0 up to whatever amount I have set here, a 0.4, and same thing on the B side. The shake is amplitude from a 0 starting point up to whatever I've set to here, and then we are glowing in between the clips, and on the B side I'm starting off at that value of a 0.4, and then I'm going down to 0. How this works, you'll see, is every single parameter has this little preset animation kind of settings in here. Now, feel free to get in here and mess around with these if you want. You really don't have to mess with these stuff. You just have to know how this works, like how we're making a clean transition every time is whatever parameter we're starting with, we're always kind of ending back down at a 0 or we're starting at 0. So that's our way that it's always going to be a clean endpoint in your sequence. It's never going to pop. There's some ways you can make it pop if you change some of these parameters, or you choose some, color effects that are made to be, through a preset consistently and not animated. That's fine if that's what you choose, but if you're just playing around with stuff, it's pretty hard to break it. But what we can do now here is maybe turn that blur up pretty big, right? And so now you'll see we're really going to see that blur. Or let's turn that shake up to a pretty crazy shake. Let's turn the frequency up. And now we can just, kind of like I said before, we can just start to play around with stuff. Let's go ahead and do a little RGB channel shaking so we can get some different colors in those shake, and we're offsetting the RGB values to get a little color in there inside that shake. Maybe add some randomness in there as well. And now we can look at the result. At any point in time, if you just want to preview a node, now you can just say, okay, just show me my shake here as to what it's doing. Let's just show me my blur, right? And then you can go ahead and see the whole thing as well. And same thing like we talked about earlier. You can turn off any of these parameters. You can bring it back in to Premiere. The beauty is, let's turn all this off. And I'm just going to turn everything off. And like I said, when we jump back in Premiere here, go ahead and give it a render. So Premiere just sees it as just a simple dissolve. So it really, all of that kind of complex work under the hood, it is almost invisible to Premiere. Premiere sees it just like a dissolve, and I can go ahead and let's make this a little bigger, right? I can go ahead and adjust this transition. Let's make it longer. And let's render that out. And now we can have a nice long transition with all of those kind of complexity we put behind it. Or let's go ahead and make this real quick. Let's make this real fast. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the 8 frames. I'm a big fan of the 8 to 10 frame transitions. Really type quick little pops as well. Let's make it even shorter. And you can see we can get these fun different looks as well. But it is amazing to me, and something that I'm really going to harp on, that this is a live transition. So like I said, you can go ahead and you can drag this 100 times downstream. I can take this and I can copy it, throw it on right here, and then let's make this one longer. And now I can render both those out and play them down. It really is your own little live transition as well. So this is really what I talk about, the power of Builder, is to go ahead and get in here and do these kind of complex transitions, build things from scratch. Each one of these is its own individual transition now too, though. So don't think if I go ahead and adjust the parameters on these, it will not ripple through and affect all of them. Every time I copy and paste, it is like a new little transition. But that's what I really love about using this transition builder, is having the flexibility to go ahead and paste these downstream, not have to redo things over and over again, and adjust those links as well. Okay, cool. All right, I am going to keep going here. Feel free to hit me in the chat if you have any other questions, because believe it or not to go super sales pitchy on you, but this isn't even really what is the super fun stuff of Builder. If we go back into Builder, and here's my little effect we just created. If you give it a few seconds, the Builder will kind of catch up and cache for you as well. this is great and all. This is, everything we're doing with creating custom things in here. I do love just to get in here and just tell people all the time, just try out different transitions once you've built an effect. Like let's throw a hyper push at the base here, and you'll get a whole new different type look as well. So love that. It really is a fun way to just play around and learn the Sapphire package and mess around with things. But this is really like only, I would say, like, the second most popular way people use Builder. People, use it, number one, to just take an effect, just take a transition, drag it on a cut, and kind of, choose your own parameters you want to push back to the host. People use it, like I've just shown you here, with kind of creating a complex transition from scratch, with your own custom. But I would say the most common way people use it is to get it presets. So if I go ahead and click load from within inside Builder, or let's do it from the host here, just load preset. Either way is fine. It's both going to take you to the same place. You're going to take you to the Sapphire preset browser. And this looks and feels just like the normal Sapphire preset browser, as if I took Dissolve Blur and threw it on a cut and just went ahead and looked at all the presets within Dissolve Blur. But it's a little different because, if I took Swishpan and loaded on Swishpan and hit load preset, I'm looking only at Swishpan's presets. If I took Dissolve Blur and threw it on a cut and then hit load preset, I was just looking at Dissolve Blur presets. Because I did it with S transition, I told you earlier, this is every single transition that Sapphire has kind of jam packed into one. You can now look at all the different, presets, all the different, there's thousands of Sapphire, presets that you can look at all within one place. So you can, how basically you get at that is on the top here, you'll notice there's some different options than you have from the Sapphire Classic preset browser. Number one is just transitions. And when you click on that, you'll see here are all the different transitions. So we can go ahead and look into Dissolve Blur, like I mentioned, and here are all the Dissolve Blur transitions. But we can also go ahead and X that out, and we can look at the infamous clock wipe, right? So we can see a nice clock wipe. There's your wipe with borders, Michael. Right? It's there for you if you need it. If you have a reason for it, we like to say it is there for you. It was created in 1999. It's still there. Still there. Okay, so that's the cool part, is all of these different effects are in there. Here are swish pans as well. That's great and all. We also have this concept of groups, because this is everything combined into one. Here's where we're categorizing all the different Sapphire effects by groups. So we can say, like, rather than thinking, what's the name of the transition that you want to use today? Like, what we encourage you to say is like more like, what kind of transition do you want to make? Do you want to make a lighting transition? Okay, let's click on lighting or glowing, either one of those. Do you want to do a nice glowy transition? Well, here are all the different presets for all the glow transitions we have. And there's a bunch of them. Here's Dissolve Glow, which is Glow on the Horizon by the legendary Todd Previs, right, who created this as well. Great preset in here. But we can also go ahead and let's see in here. Here's like an edge raise transition. Here's a lens flare transition as well. These all fall under anything that is nice and glowy. Here's a crazy Dissolve Zap with an electrical storm one as well, right? Here's a nice glint rainbow transition. So these are all these different lighting transitions under groups. You could say, you know what, I'm not interested in that. Give me something glitchy. Here is all our damage effects. Here are some of the pixel sort transitions we have. We have so many transitions. I believe there are over 80 different transitions now. TV channel change, all this different really cool kind of modern glitchy type stuff as well you'll find in here. So this is just like such a better way to work, in my opinion, than thinking, under pixel sort, there's one that looks really good, or under TV channel change is one I really like. It's kind of crazy to think we actually asked you to memorize these type of things in here as well. But now you can kind of get through and just visually look at everything and pop through and kind of see what, kind of tickles your fancy, and then go ahead and try that out and load it up as well. So you can look at all the transitions individually in SFX. You can look at groups as well, and you can look at this category, which is called Builder Effects. And within Builder Effects right now, there are 81 in here. Each of these are kind of custom-made transitions that were all done by, either outside editors and artists, or they were done internally by Ben, by John, by myself, by Alan Lawrence, our other partner in crime on the Sapphire team. And each of these is a full builder setup that is built that you have access to right now. So it's like 80 kind of hidden transitions in this folder in here. And you can find something you like in here. It's a really kind of like poppy concert lens flare type transition. Some Kaleido shake warps as well. Here's a kind of advanced pixel sort. Let me go ahead and grab one of these I like. Something like glitchy love here as well. If I go ahead and load that on and then jump in to the builder, you will see it is a completely live effect in here, right? We try and do a good job. I created this one, so I can hear Ben yelling at me probably, or John probably yelling at me silently that I should have cleaned this up better. But we do our best in here to label these type of things. So you won't just see pixel sort over and over again, or here glow. We try and label things to let you know what the individual parameters do as well. And it is, a whole bunch of different effects going on to create this new transition. But what I like to say is it is a kind of interesting way to kind of reverse engineer, to kind of rip apart. Like me personally, it's always hard for me to start with a blank slate. I like to look at things, pull them apart, see how they're built, and that gets me thinking creatively as to like what I want to use, what I want to create today. This is a perfect example for that. You can get in here and kind of see maybe how we're using in animated, we're using a flicker for a matte, for this pixel sort, right? So that's really what we're doing here. And then we're feeding it into the matte input of pixel sort to kind of get a pixel sort that is kind of popping on or off without keyframing, and then using glow to give a bunch of light hits as well, and then comping them all together with a parallax strips transition at the very back end to give this really cool type of glitchy, almost like beta SP ripping apart as well. But when you hit OK and you jump back into your timeline and hit render, I mean, that's all you really have to do is you just have to go ahead and navigate to the preset, and then you can add it to your timeline, and you're good to go. You don't have to change anything. It's like a brand new transition is there, and we can go ahead and play it, and we have it in our timeline now. Now we can adjust the length. We can make it really short maybe. A common question people all the time want to ask is like, is this just like rendering a dissolve? Is it a way to even though we have, 8 different Sapphire effects underneath the hood there, is this going to be a super fast render? And the answer is that there's obviously it depends upon what you put inside the builder is going to kind of, determine how long the render takes. Like if you take a real kind of effect that is a little killer on the processor, or your GPU, something like bokeh lights, and jack it up to 500 and do 10 different instances of bokeh lights, which is generating a whole bunch of these beautiful soft little lights on top of each other, and then go ahead to render it. Of course, that's going to take a lot longer than if you render, say just a dissolve or S blur. But the caveat is there are a lot of cheats and little kind of faster ways that Sapphire knows how to render internally. So if you took that, this effect and stacked it all on top of each other, and stacked a, layer of pixel sort on top of a layer of glow, on top of a layer of blur, each time that Premiere goes to render all those individual effects on top of each other, it could be doing 2 and 3 times the amount of work that is necessary. And the beauty of Builder is you're doing it the fastest way possible. So it's your confident way to know that this is the fastest way. If it's going to re-render some pixels, it's not going to be doing unnecessary work over on top of each other, if that makes sense. So it really depends upon which individual effects you put on inside of Builder in terms of like how long your renders ago, but be confident if you do some crazy stuff like this one, then it will be the fastest render possible. All right, let me check for some questions. All right. Okay, let's see here. Chris, I agree. I love all these Sapphire transitions. And like I said, if you've been unaware of S transition in the past, just go ahead and jump into that builder folder. You're going to see 80 new ones in there. And there's some real gems in there, some real fun ones as well. Let's see, Real Pain to do border wiped in S-Flame without transitions. Yep, I agree, Michael. It is bizarre. Some of the older apps that haven't really ever had to update some of the internal modules because plugins have always done that as well. People used S-Wipe and Flame for years, right? So they never really had to modify S-Wipe. So it is hard sometimes if you're on a workstation without that as well. You forget, right? Like, oh, I can't put a border on this as well. I do it all the time, even if I'm in Premiere and I'm just messing around and I'm just like, oh, I just want to do a wipe. And I'm thinking like, I'm constantly uninstalling Sapphire and reinstalling Sapphire, and I might be in a state where I have it uninstalled and I'm like, I don't want to take the 30 seconds it takes to install it. I'm too impatient. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot there is no border wipe in there. Ben wants to see multi-stream wipe. Shocker, because he created it. No joke. This is no joking. This is one of my favorite ones as well. Let me go ahead and jump into the builder effects, and there it is, created by Ben Brownlee. This is one that's a really cool one as well. Go ahead and load this one up and jump in. You'll see. Oh, Ben, you are a crazy person. Crazy person. Look at this. What's happening? Unbelievable. Okay, so let me go ahead and play this through and we can kind of see what's happening. There is a whole bunch of different stuff going on in this effect, but it's a cool different way to show that we can wipe to a color and we can adjust everything within it. We can have one different wipe coming in, one different wipe coming out. You'll see here there is Ben has left you a crazy bunch of kind of breadcrumbs to see his madness way of thinking. He's also actually not using the preset transition at all in this. He is using wipe rectangle for the full thing, and I don't think, is he? Yeah, there is some animation at its core there as well. What I really like about this is kind of like very similar to me or John or anyone who's creating these. I know one of our friends, Damien, creates a lot, and there's been a whole bunch of Sapphire artists over the year. Ben's creating this because he wants it for himself, right? He wants to do this type of multicolor wipe, and so he's created it for himself. Save it in Sapphire. Now everyone has access to it as well. So you can see here, this is the different, he's using Wart Transform here, and here's where you can add the color to the outgoing clip. So we can go ahead and tweak any of the colors here and get this type of stuff as well. This is how he's creating the wipe through from the color. And here are the stripes as well, so we can change all these as well and wiping out from the center. And then he's repeating the whole thing on the B side as well. And this is where he's putting the from and the two together on the two sides. So now I've created a beautifully ugly purple. And let's even horrify Ben probably even more. Let's do something nice and green on this side as well. So we have our nice purple to green type wipe as well. So this is kind of a good peek. Like I usually showed one of Damien's crazy effects in here to show the complexity of where you can push as transition. But there really is, just the limits of your kind of your creativity, your imagination, your skill at procedural effects in terms of building in here. But once you can kind of get in and maybe see how Ben's building something like this multi-stripe wipe here, it can kind of get your mind thinking as to what you can do with it as well. And the beauty is, like I said before, when you hit OK, we can now render this out. See, this is a pretty fast render because there's really not a lot going on there. It's just color effects and wipes. And we can adjust that so we can get a nice big long one as well. nice 42 frame transition. Oh, I said I'd never do it, but I just did it. There you go. So we have our nice fast glitchy transition. Then we have our nice big multicolor wipe there as well. So there really is almost no limitations to what you can create. Like if you can almost like just think of Sapphire as your tool set, as your kind of palette of paints. You can combine them in all these different ways. There is a whole bunch of matte tools in here, and layering functions. There's a really deep tool set to create whatever you want in S Transition, as our friend Ben has done here as well. Okay, let's see. Yep. Changing the timing, sure. Ben is pointing out that, yep, we can change all those timings with the animation curves in there. And Ben did make this for himself out of sheer panic, I bet, as to how to create this for a project. So you can kind of see why it is hard for me to ever think about going back to using the normal, or I'll say just, kind of first generation Sapphire transitions. It just seems very limited. With S Transition, you can throw it on there. You can make it whatever you want. You can control the different parameters that get promoted back to the host. And you can access great presets, right? That were done, almost like brand new transitions that are some of these builder presets. And you can just access all of the presets by groups, instead of thinking of them as individual effects. So it really is kind of, once you go down this road with S Transition, it's really hard to go back. It seems very limited to go back to the old school way of thinking. All right, so I did promise I would go over some of the brand new transitions, and I will make good on that. I want to talk about Hyper Push and Hyperloop. Hyperloop. No, definitely not Hyperloop. But Hyper Push and Hyper Pull. So I am going to stick in S Transition because of all the aforementioned reasons I just said. And let's go ahead and jump into Edit Effects. And I'm going to choose one of the new ones, which kind of, you think about the way we organize these, or there are dissolves, and there's a whole bunch of dissolves that are in there. Dissolve Glow, Dissolve Blur. There are a whole bunch of wipes. And then there's the other category. I really like the other category. This is where Hyper Push and Hyper Pull exist as well. So let me go ahead and throw on Hyper Push. You can see what we're doing is we are kind of zooming through. We're doing a little digital zoom here with a whole bunch of motion blur. And then I have some kind of some RGB distortion on top of that. This is the preset as well. And let's go ahead and step through, and you can kind of see what's happening here. We are zooming through with a whole bunch of different motion blur. And on top of that, we're repeating the edges of the frame that are coming in. So that's how we're matching that zoom in, right? So we're kind of warping the edges on there, and you can change that if you want to turn them off here. You can kind of see exactly what's happening in terms of how we're cheating that move in. But the beauty is when you go ahead and throw those reflections on there as well to the edges, it covers that up really quickly. And if you do this at a very fast kind of speed, you can't even tell that you're repeating those edges. You can mess with your Z distance, in terms of your from distance, and your to as well, in terms of like how much you want to zoom in or how much you want to zoom out. You can cover it with a whole bunch of motion blur as well. So you can add this on. You can add in some camera shake. You can actually glow up to that center point as well. So you can turn that glow up or turn that glow down, however you want to do it. Love this faction. You can actually add in some glow darks as well. So if you go ahead and turn on the darkness, as I like to say, you can actually have a nice black glow in there as well. And every single one of these categories, let me turn this on as well so we can get that working. The good part is that these are all, you can like kind of groups that you can turn on and off. So I want to turn off motion blur completely. You can go ahead and turn those off as well. So let me grab motion blur right here. And now we can turn that, sorry, wrong one. you want to turn that off completely. And now we have no motion blur as well. So it's a good way to kind of reset the effect completely, to scratch and kind of see like, all right, you know, maybe I've gone too far in this motion blur. Let me look what it likes. Let me see what it looks like without it. And you may look like that look as well, versus now we can add on motion blur and see that nice motion blur on top as well. Same thing with something like camera shake. We can add in some camera shake as well. Maybe add in that glow darks as well, which I lost it. Sorry. Go down here. There we go. Just a little dip to black in there as well. And, you know, all of this stuff is fun to play with as well, but you can always go ahead and grab these presets. So if you could just click load preset here, here's where you will just see Hyperzoom's presets. So this is like the one case when sometimes you do, sorry, Hyperzoom, we just want to see Hyper Push's presets and you don't want to see anything else. So this is a good way to kind of look at all of these different presets we have in here. Let's go ahead and fit that. And you can see we can affect motion on these Hyper Pull and Hyper Pushes. Here's a fun fact for you guys. Scandalous. The name of this is actually Larissa, who's the chief developer of Sapphire, one of her horses' names, right? So thus, you'll see my lovely description. Wild horses couldn't keep you away from this preset. Scandalous. It's an amazing animal. So go ahead and always try these presets out. This is a great way to give you an idea of what all of these different effects do. Like I always tell people, first thing you should do is jumping into these presets and trying them out. And more than likely, you'll find something that works really well for you. And you can go ahead and throw that on there. And now we can see it correctly in action, right? So Hyper Push and Hyper Pull are the same thing. Push is just pushing through to an image. Pull is where you want to pull out. So, you know, push works great if you have a, you know, image that you are zooming into. And if you want to zoom out, go ahead and grab Hyper Pull as well. Another new effect that we threw in recently, which I love, is whiplash, right? So let's go ahead and throw whiplash on. I was a big Sapphire swish pan guy, right? I love swish pan, but what swish pan does is it just moves from one edge of the frame to the other, right? And so you're really only getting one swish, which is great if that's what you're looking for. But what swish pan does is it actually allows you to travel a greater distance by it's going to duplicate the frame on top of each other, cover it all with a bunch of motion blur, and whip across multiple copies of that instance. So you're getting almost like a longer swish pan as well. So if I go ahead and turn this motion blur all the way off, you can kind of see what's happening here. This number right here is really the key number. It's really like the X or the Y. If you put in 0, nothing's going to happen, right? It's just going to be nothing. If I put in 1, this is like almost like a classic swish pan. It is going to travel the distance of one image. But if I put in, you know, 2, as you can see now, I'm adding in 2 copies. So you can go up to, you know, 10 is going to be a ton of copies. I like to put in maybe about 4 as well. And then we can turn back on that motion blur. And this is something, by the way, I would say very sensitive. You want to definitely stay in maybe around the 1 or the 1.2. I will definitely be talking to the team about adjusting this parameter, which goes all the way up to 500. You'd probably never want to be in 500. Probably want to be in 0 to maybe 2. Or maybe I would say 5 maybe might be the most. Most of the times, to be honest with you, I live in like a 1.3, somewhere in there. Gives you the nice amount of motion blur as well. All right, so you don't just have to go left to right. Like, you know, if you do a -4, you'll go in the opposite direction here. So now we can go the other way. We can also go, let's go up with a 1. So now we can go, you know, or let's do -4. Now we'll go down with a bunch, right, as well. And if we add in the combination of X's and Y's together, we'll get a nice little diagonal motion as well. So let's do a -4 and a -4, and that'll give us a nice little diagonal. But if we kind of offset those numbers into a -3, you'll see we'll kind of be moving those around, and we can get a whole bunch of different looks as well. Let's do like a 1 as well, so we can get these nice little ones. Let's maybe do this like a -2, so we can get some really nice different looks out of whiplash as well. Whiplash also, if I reset it to its kind of standard to show you guys, it has 3 different ways you can end. It defaults to a nice smooth, but if you want, you can bounce that end at the end, or you can snap to that very last image as well. So you can kind of finish in 2 different type ways. You can have a nice smooth finish, or you can snap, or have it bounce kind of past your endpoint and plop back as well. Same thing like with everything. Check out the presets on these. There's a whole bunch of different awesome ones that Alan has created, and you can see all the different ways that this stuff works as well. So definitely check out all the different presets. We put a ton of time into these, into thinking, we really want this to be your first kind of place to go, to kind of seeing what this effect does as well. So you can check out some of these like shrink spins as well, and use this as we go. Just grab a drink of water quick. Cool. So whiplash is a new one. The hyper pull and hyper pushes are new ones as well. Definitely check those out. Anything we do, what I like to say is anything you do in the builder, or anything you do in Sapphire in generally, works across different platforms, right? So we are platform agnostic, like when we're inside this builder here. So let's say you love this transition. This is my favorite transition I've ever loved. I 100% ripped it off Alan. I'm taking credit for his work now. And I threw this in my Premiere timeline, and everyone loves it. Let me render it out. And I have my little transition. Let's make it a little faster. Okay, so this is my transition I'm going for. It's great. Everyone loves it. And that's great for an offline edit in Premiere. But let's say now I want to finish in Flame, right? Or I want to finish in Resolve. You can go ahead and easily export that and import that into another host app, and it's all the same to Sapphire. It doesn't really matter where we're at in terms of that. Like, it's not going to work if I was to export an AAF here, or some sort of transfers to get my sequence over. Those won't follow. No third-party effects currently follow right now from Premiere or Media Composer over to Resolve or Flame or Baselight or some sort of finishing system right now, but the Sapphire presets do, right? So what you would want to do on something like this is, if you had a transition, like I said, that you loved and you wanted to transfer to the offline, you would jump into this transition here, edit effect, right? Go up into the top of your little preset browser here, and if I can remember how to do this, save as, right? And when you save it here, you can call this, let's call this Brian's Whiplash, Brian's Whip, and I will put my name as the author, and I will say definitely did not steal this from Alan. You could choose different characteristics if you wanted to show up, under the different categories we looked at before as well. You can add new characteristics. You can star it, which is a great one. I love to just, in the preset browser, look at my starred favorites as well. But then you can export here, and you can see here, it's just a simple little file. You can go ahead and choose wherever you want in terms of exporting this. Go ahead and save that. Send it via email, whoever you want to transfer it to the new workstation. And on the other side of it, I'm going to don't save, cancel. Let's just say now we're back in a different host. Let's say we created this in Media Composer, and now we're over on this side. We can go ahead and drag S transition all, go ahead, load preset. And under the preset browser under here, now this is where you import, right? So now we can choose to import wherever we want. We can go to the desktop. We can grab that preset wherever it was saved, and we can go ahead and grab it, and it will show. If it was a builder effect, it'll show in this category as well. If it was a whiplash preset, it would show in the whiplash as well. Wherever you want to save it, it'll show up there as well. So that is kind of the cool way to kind of get your stuff that you've created in one host app and transfer it to the other. I think that's kind of a dark secret of Sapphire. Not too many people know you can do that, and it does save a lot of time, definitely, if you are using a lot of these transitions as well. So that's just something to know about all Sapphire transitions. You can create something in Premiere, in Media Composer, and you can follow that export import process. I love how I'm looping this blank dissolve here when I've showed you all these great transitions. Let me show you one more one while I'm talking at you that I mentioned earlier. Damien strip slide one. Strip scramble. Similar to Ben. This is from a friend of ours, Damien Levesque, who creates these for himself as well. And this is a big one as well. He's similar to Ben's mind and way of thinking, and what he's doing is taking an image and ripping it apart and reassembling it on the other side. So this will take a couple seconds to preview, but then it'll cache, and you'll get a nice little preview. It's just taking an image and taking it apart into strips and then reassembling on the other side. It's basically like two effects here with a bunch of cutouts on the A side and on the B side. And he's using this right now, interestingly, like he's using card flip here. And card flip is a, transition that if you turn it to 0, it will do nothing. If I turn this up, I don't even know what's going to happen here. It's going to give it a nice flip, I think. Let's see if we go here. See, it's going to flip that around as well. So what Damien actually cheated here is no transition by taking card flip and putting revolutions down to 0. Another way you can do that is if he actually just was in dissolve as his base here and turn this dissolve speed up. Turn this up to 10, and you'll see what happens is you'll now have a dissolve that's so fast it is just faster than 1 frame. So that is a way that if you ever want to actually do like a cutty dissolve, you can go ahead and just take the dissolve speed parameter, which you'll see in every transition, turn that up to 10 or something that's, will do it basically faster than a 1 frame dissolve, and you'll get a straight cut as well as that. If I turn that back down to a 1, I would have a classic dissolve between the front and the 2 clip. Alrighty. So we are coming up on an hour. If anyone has any questions, now's your chance. Throw them into the chat. I will answer it. Let's go ahead and dump these over here. I'll render that out as well. Sapphire is available right now, 2022.5. Oh, look at that. Lovely. Let's see if it powered through. That's my favorite. That's my favorite part. We have a nice error that we can just power through and act like it never happened. Sapphire 2022.5 is available right now, so you can download it. You can try out Sapphire if you've never used it before. It will have a red X. The trial is watermarked, right? But you can still use all the effects. It's 100%. There's no features limited, except there is a big honking red X over it. And the effects are limited to HD, so if your Sapphire itself is resolution independent, but the trial is limited to HD, so it will have black bars on the edge if you put it on a 4K or an 8K clip. You can get Sapphire for a subscription, you can get it monthly, you can get it yearly, whatever works for you as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this office hours. Feel free to jump in the chat. If you guys have any ideas for future office hours, 100%, if you email info@borisfx.com, one of us will see that. We're going to get a proper office hours email set up. But if you have a problematic shot or you're, a specific topic that you're looking for us to focus on, definitely reach out to us. Let us know. We're going to be doing these things every Tuesday, focusing on different subjects. The times are a bit all over the place because we are all over the globe in different time zones, so we're trying to keep it local, so we're not just all East Coast USA. We had last week, Martin was in Melbourne and did it in his local time, and John's in Sydney, Australia, Ben's in Denmark, so we're all over the place in different places. So we're trying to keep it to local time zones. Your best bet is to hit that little subscribe button on Boris FX Learn, and you will get notified on Tuesday whenever we're going live. Feel free to reach out and tune into each live stream if you want to learn more about Boris FX products. Thank you so much. My name once again is Brian Fox for Boris FX. Appreciate the time. Appreciate everyone hanging out with me and watching me geek out about Sapphire transitions. And we'll see you guys on the next live stream. Bye-bye.